Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Why a High Limit Umbrella Policy is Critical for Community Associations webinar. I'm Sherry Branson, your host, and I'm now joined by Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance Services, the president of Kevin Davis. And Kevin joins me from Los Angeles. Hi, Kevin.
Hello there. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Kevin, I can't believe it's December. It's already the end of 2019, and we've had a super busy year. We've done a lot.
Amazing. Really been an amazing year. That's true.
Yeah, and the holiday, Christmas and all the big New Year's is right around the corner. So it's a busy time for everybody, and we have a lot of people joining us. Welcome. We have more than 80 people from across the U.S., East Coast to West Coast, joining us. So welcome, and we're going to talk about umbrella today, Kevin.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because over the past couple of months, we've been getting a lot of phone calls on umbrella liability. And I know you've been getting them also, Sherry.
Yes, a lot. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. Exactly. A lot of interest in umbrella right now.
Yeah, and our goal today is really talk about why these calls are coming in. Because for some reason, these large umbrella here has really impacted the umbrella market for community associations. It just is not the same as it once been. It's not as easy to get as it used to be able to get to. And that seems to be a big issue right now.
Absolutely. And I did want to mention to everybody that if you have any questions about what we go over today, there's a questions box on the screen. You can type your questions into that box, and we'll do a Q&A at the end of today's webinar. And I record all of the webinars and put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. So feel free to visit our website where you can listen to the recordings. You can also get marketing materials. And I did upload today's PowerPoint presentation into the handout section on the toolbar. So you just click on that tab and you should be able to download the PowerPoint. So Kevin, the umbrella programs for community associations market is really tightening up. That's what's going on, right?
And that's it in a nutshell. And the reason is simple. See, for far too long, these umbrella programs, these big giant umbrella programs, the premiums were just too low and limits too high for the premiums we're collecting. For example, a lot of the associations were getting a $50 million umbrella limit for about $2,500. And like in New York and other places where you have these large community associations in the major metropolitan areas, you get a $250 million umbrella policy for $4,500.
Oh, that's incredible. That's a really low premium for a high limit. That's a lot of coverage for that amount, which is basically unsustainable in the long run.
And that's what it was saying. You look at these things. I remember when I first started using umbrella about a little over 20 years ago, right? There were a handful of community association umbrella programs out there, right? Since then, over the past 10 years, have been like 15 to 20. And these programs primarily focus on large limits, 100 million, 50 million, 25 million, and the premiums were low. I remember about 10 years ago, you can get a $300 million umbrella policy for less than $5,000.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. And now there's about 10 programs out there. I counted at least around 10 of them out there now. And again, they're all having difficulties times right now, all of them.
So it's really changed quite a bit in the past 20 years. And as a result, the premiums are beginning to rise, the limits are being reduced, and underwriting is becoming much more restrictive.
And that's what it boils down to. That's what happened. Basically what happened is that, I guess in a nutshell, what really happened is the world has changed. We have to live in a society now where we believe that we're more entitled than we ever were before.
Yeah, and now people feel that they get upset if they feel their rights are being infringed upon. And that becomes a major problem for community associations because if people feel they can't paint their house the color they want to paint it or put up a shed in the backyard or whatever, they feel like, well, why can't I do this? I should have the right to do this.
Exactly. And right now what's happening from the board member side, they are constantly being challenged on the authority when it comes to things like maintenance work or landscape and repair, or especially enforcing the rules.
Absolutely. And unit owners, they receive their documents, they never read them, they just throw them in a drawer, they sit there for years, and then they get upset and they blame and criticize the board when they feel that they're not doing their job, or they're being told they can't paint their house a certain color, they get upset. But meanwhile, they haven't even read the documents.
And that's what's happening right now. For example, we had a $2 million loss, right? We're claiming against a unit owner because a unit owner went to the trash receptor, trash compactor unit, because he lost his phone. So he goes in there, he looks for his phone, and all of a sudden that massive accident happened, and he ended up getting crushed in the trash receptor. But what happened is there's rules that if you go in there, you have to have another person with you. The room is locked at all times, but because he didn't care about the rules, didn't understand the rules, okay, he went in there, got the keys, went inside there, opened up, and guess what? It's cost the association $2 million.
Wow, wow, that's a big claim. And it's sad that he felt he could do that, because that's a dangerous situation to put yourself into. But he didn't follow the rules. He didn't, and the board member, like you said, they really weren't supposed to give that person the key. Two people were supposed to go in there at the same time. So it turned into a tragedy, and also a $2 million claim. So
Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes back to the communication part, is that, on the boards of one side, do what they want to do, the unit owners do what they want to do, but there are rules, but people just don't feel entitled, and they don't care about the rules. To them, rules are suggestions. Either they do it or not, they don't do it.
Right, right. And like we were talking about earlier, they might not even know the rules. They haven't read their documents, so they're just kind of winging it. And you think about the number of unit owners, renters, managers, contractors, employees, and other people coming into daily contact with community associations all the time, every day. I mean, that just raises the risk that much exponentially.
Yeah, and don't remember, it's the board's responsibility, association responsibility, to protect these individuals from property damage, bodily injury, but also personal injury and any wrongful act.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the people that come into contact with a community association, but the increased exposures because of all these new amenities that these associations are adding. A lot of them have playgrounds, they have swimming pools, some of them have golf courses. I mean, you add all these amenities, and that brings up the risk as well.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about, the exposures. That's what we're looking at in terms of why things are different now than they have been in the past.
Absolutely. So Kevin, when we're talking about these claims, everybody who's in the industry is wondering, where are these claims occurring?
Okay, this is a really interesting thing, okay, because we did a research and said, here's where the claims are coming from. If you look at this grid here, the majority of the claims, 2/3 of all the claims are coming from the East Coast and West Coast. And I mean East Coast and West Coast, what I'm talking about is, okay. So the East Coast and West Coast. On the East Coast, you take I-95 from New England all the way down to the Florida Keys. That's where most of the exposure is at. Anywhere east of 95 on the East Coast, and you take I-5 all the way down from Washington State to the Mexican border, west of there, that's where the majority of claims is. I don't know why they're having it there, but most of them are happening right there.
Interesting. So that is literally coast to coast. So it's the coastal
Coast to coast.
On the East Coast, coastal section on the West Coast, which is a lot of big houses, a lot of expensive areas for people to live in. And so what do you think the reason is you're seeing a lot of these claims?
Well, it's interesting now. We look at like Florida right now, okay? Florida, we see a lot of claims. And again, you mentioned it, where you have people with a lot of money on that East Coast area. You have a lot of high rises, a lot of experiences, a lot of things going on. But also in Florida, you have a lot of people who have a lot of time on their hands. When you put together people with time on their hands, and you put the fact that there's people with a lot of money, you're going to end up with a series of claims. The same like with New York City. In New York City, there are people with a lot of time on their hands, there are people with a lot of money there. So we're going to see more claims on that East Coast than there. On the West Coast in California, it's kind of interesting, because I always believe that people are kind of more entitled in California. We had a $12.5 million claim in California, where the board of directors association was sued. But here was a kid who is a homeowner association, dove in one of those above ground pools you buy. Well, the problem is he became a quadriplegic. He dove in there, and they were sued the manufacturer because they didn't have these warning labels on there. Now, they had warning labels, but they gave them to the people to put on their side. But not only did they have warning labels, but they wanted more warning in the sense that you shouldn't have anybody who can dive in off of a bench. And so they really put the blame on the manufacturer as opposed to the parents for not really supervising the kid. So we see that a lot in California. We see that a lot on the East Coast. Again, we see a lot on the East Coast and the West Coast. Now, going east, okay, or going west from the East Coast, you're talking about things like Texas Texas primarily, and Colorado, all the way from Arizona and Nevada on the West Coast. Then on the east, you got the Midwest, basically, and Illinois, and that's where a lot of your claims. So your claims are coming from that territory, and you're seeing a lot of, again, based on the simple fact that, who are you to tell me I can't do X? Who do you tell me I can't do Y? I suffered a loss. Who's responsible for it? Not me, somebody else responsible. And we're seeing these claims grow bigger and bigger and more complicated than they ever were before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like we said, people are not reading the bylaws, or not reading the documents. And, and people are looking for somebody to blame when an accident occurs in a swimming pool or wherever it happens. And now, Kevin, we're talking about community associations today, and everybody's working in this particular industry. What type of umbrella claims are unique to community associations?
Sure. When we talk about these unique claims, okay, it's about 6 or 7 different categories here that we see, okay? The first one, we talk about fire losses. And here we had a couple of interesting fire losses. And the one that I thought was really interesting is that you had a robbery inside of a unit. And what actually happened is that you have an individual who was selling jewelry inside their cosmetic jewelry inside the unit. Somebody breaks in there, robs the person, and sets it on fire.
Wow.
Yeah. So he got out. I mean, actually, they got out. They were burned, but they survived. But what happened? Came back and sued the board because the board breached their responsibility because they didn't enforce the documents. The rule was to, guess what? To make sure they don't have selling commercial enterprise inside their unit. They didn't do it, so they want to hold the board responsible.
Oh, so even though they were breaking the rules, the person selling the jewelry because they're running a commercial business inside their condo, they decided to sue the board because they let them break the rules.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And again, that's kind of things. Again, we're talking about that responsibility, and that is on the fire part. On the water, we all know water right now is the #1 claim insurance companies face each year against condominium associations. Water is it.
Absolutely. I know, living in a homeowners association, we often see slip and falls, we see trip and falls, etc. When it rains really heavy here, I'm in Texas, everybody in Austin, Texas. On rainy days, there's a lot of water buildup in the common area, and you see people slipping and trekking the water into the building. So, that causes these accidents. Water is a big hazard.
And you got sewer backups, broken pipes, leaky appliances. All these things are really add up to this water issue that we see a lot of claims on. In fact, we had a situation where an individual was coming down the stairs, slipped on some water, and the railing actually came out.
Wow.
Now, $2 million loss, but what happened, and again, it goes back to one simple thing. The person that was doing it happened to be drunk at the time.
Wow. So rather than, the fact that he was drunk being the reason he slipped and fell, he's blaming it on the water and then the bad railing.
And association who didn't clean up the water, didn't fix the railing and all that. So,
Yeah, I mean, basically, the upkeep of a particular association is responsibility of the association to maintain it, to repair things, to repair the common areas, the units. If there's some kind of an event like a big disaster, like an earthquake or a flood or a hurricane, and even the small maintenance issues, like repairs, a cracked sidewalk. I've heard of a lot of claims of cracked sidewalks in neighborhoods where people trip and fall in a crack. The sidewalks aren't even. So all that kind of stuff, the deferred maintenance, can lead to big claims.
Yeah, upkeep failures is really a major issue. We had, again, this is a big one. It's an $8 million loss where an association failed to repair the gate in the entrance, because they had entrance gates. What happened was that once in a while it malfunctioned and closed faster than it would. You have cars racing to get inside there. They get in there and they complain to the board, but the board didn't do anything. As a result, one time, an elder lady came through there, walking in there, and all of a sudden the gate closed too fast and ended up crushing this poor lady. So,
Wow.
yeah, again, it's an $8 million claim.
Yeah,
So,
a tragedy that could have
failure.
been
You got to
avoided.
upkeep the association.
Absolutely. That's a tragedy that could have been easily avoided by just fixing the gate.
Yes, yes. The next one here, we got a breach of fiduciary duty. This is the most common type of claim we're going to see, is breach of fiduciary duty. And the reason why is because the board has a duty responsible to act in the association's best interest without conflict of interest. And whenever they do it, guess what? They could be sued. Simple as that. This is your D&O. These are your typical D&O claims. But again, the D&O, the umbrella goes over the D&O. So when you have a breach of fiduciary duty that is massive and can impact a lot of association, it can go into the umbrella.
Absolutely.
Same is true for discrimination. Discrimination claims are very difficult to prove and very, very expensive type of claims.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you prove you didn't do something? The discrimination claims can be really difficult because if I'm the board member and somebody's parking in a spot that they're not supposed to be parking in, like a handicapped spot or something like that, and I have the car towed, did I treat them unfairly because they don't like where they're from, or did I do it because of sound business reasons?
Exactly. That's the whole thing with discrimination. How do you do it, especially in condos and community associations? Because I may like you, Sherry, and say it's okay to park in handicap or visitors parking place for the day. But then again, there's other people we don't like. We tow their car immediately, and they'll come back and say, well, you towed it away from me because I'm a protected class. So it's really, really a difficult situation for community.
Yeah, parking in condo associations is really, it's very premium. Like everybody has their designated spots, and parking can be a big issue, a major issue.
Yeah, yeah. The next one we have an employment practices claim. We had a $1 million claim. Our resident was actually sexually assaulted by association employee.
Wow. And I know in this particular claim, Kevin, the association did not run a simple background check on the employees.
Yeah, yeah. And as a result, when they did find out that he actually was a sexual predator, and just a simple background check would have done the job. And again, you end up with $2 million judgment.
And that's such an easy, fast, and inexpensive way to protect an association and to protect your liability when you're hiring employees. I mean, that's just really basic. But like we talked about, board members are volunteers. They're not human resources professionals, so they may not think they have to run a background check. So they just don't know they're volunteers. And now, Kevin, looking ahead to 2020, now we're at the end of 2019, so I'm sure there's some changes and some things going on in 2020 that, that you see coming down the pike. So what would you like to talk about?
Again, interesting. Before we talk about 2020, here's some sample some large condominium claims that we put on here. It's for your own, so you can go back to your association, go back to your clients and tell them these are the kind of claims you need that happen to be over the $1 or $2 million limit we currently have. So let's talk about 2020, right? 2020 right now, we're looking at it, it's going to be kind of a complicated set of circumstances. That's the way we feel right now in 2020, that we're trapped. We don't know how the thing's going to shake out, because we know right now that we have these huge limits out there and we're having huge losses. We also know that the price should be better. So what we're doing, we're noticing these things. We're noticing the gaps in coverages. We notice is that now you can't find some of these limits. So what we're saying is underwriting becoming more important to us. So we are doing something we've always done on the D&O side, but we're going to do it just as much on the umbrella side to really protect our program. And that is to get more and more answers to more complicated questions, because again, a lot of these associations are becoming more complicated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, and sometimes the application does not provide all the information.
Exactly. So we have to do research now to find out what's going on there. We have to actually go to the internet and go Google information and find out what is happening. Are there any unusual exposures we haven't seen before?
Yeah, lots of new things keep popping up in the condo association and HOA world. Hotel operations. Then there's Airbnb. Then there's housing for students and restaurants or offices, like a mixed use type development where the first level is a lot of commercial businesses and then condos above it. I mean, we really have to take a closer look at all of the accounts and really dig into it to find out what we're underwriting.
And that's the point there. We believe right now that the main way to keep our program safe and our program going is to underwrite and look at these accounts better than they have looked at before. And we got to also talk about the loss history. The loss history is key because every association out there, they have that one person in there that's capable of committing a large loss. We know that one person who's disliked, nobody likes them. So our job is to say, do we know who that person is? And if they have a claim, we're going to see more and more claims from that one individual to the point where it may hit that umbrella sometime in the future. So loss history is really, really important. So I think the bottom line on 2020 is this. If you when you send an application in, expect us to call you and say, we need more information. We need to know more about what's going on in that community before we give a quote. Because again, what we want to make sure is 10 years from now, you still have an umbrella program where you get good quality limits and at a decent premium.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And now, Kevin, I get asked this question quite a bit from brokers, and I'm sure there's a little confusion about it. Umbrella and excess policies are different. Can you talk about the difference a little bit?
Sure. When we talk about umbrella versus excess policy, excess coverage does one thing, provides excess liability coverage limits above the primary. It doesn't give you any benefits. It doesn't give you more coverage. It gives you, if you have a $1 million primary and you have a $10 million excess, it gives you $10 million for everything that happens under that primary policy. Yeah. Now, what umbrella does, it broadens it because not only gives you the excess coverages, like the excess policy, but it broadens up to give you coverages than before. So, for example, we talked about discrimination before. Discrimination is excluded under the primary policy, okay? But it's not excluded under the umbrella policy. So we had a situation where there was a situation where there's a discrimination kind of claim, and as a result of discrimination, it was a service dog, where the person wanted a service dog. And again, one of the big problems we have right now is service animals, because are they service animals or are they corporate pets? And what happened was the board declined to have a special situation, and as a result, there was a $300,000 loss, and the umbrella paid for it, included in the general liability. So an umbrella is better than the excess policy.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So if they did not have an umbrella in this particular situation, it would cost $350,000. It was covered by the umbrella, but if they just had an excess policy, they'd have no coverage.
Exactly, under the general liability policy.
Right, under the GL.
Under the general liability policy, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And now, Kevin, we're talking about umbrella in general and, the claims that we're seeing in the community association world. Let's talk about the Kevin Davis Insurance umbrella policy, especially the premium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's right now is the key. Okay, first of all, we do have a true umbrella. Not straight excess. It's an umbrella policy. Some of our competitors have a straight excess policy. Make sure you get an umbrella. We have a true umbrella. Now, when you look at the cost of umbrella insurance, it depends on a lot of factors. Again, we look at the application. The application tells us the number of units, number of stories, type of construction, type of association is a condo versus a homeowner association, and the states. If it's in Florida, it costs a little bit more. If it's in Iowa or North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So where it's located does matter. And if you have employees, you don't have employees. So now, historically, in the past, umbrella premium is really based on the percentage of the primary premium. So we made the assumption that the underwriter of the primary did their job, underwritten it, looked at it, saw it was a good account, and we would just charge a percentage. So if you had a $10,000 general liability policy, the umbrella would be $4,000. Or they would say, a umbrella policy would be $500 per mil. So if you had a $10 million umbrella, it could cost you about $5,000. That's the way it was done in the past. However, It has to be changed because we don't know in our umbrella market, in our umbrella programs, what the primary is being done. We don't know if it's been underwritten property. We don't know what it looks like. So we're doing the underwriting and making sure that that account is worthy of, you know, such a high limit and at a low premium. And that's what we've been doing. And that makes it really different. And we're talking about things, associations, you know, condos, homeowner associations, timeshares, even apartments.
That's right, even apartments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I do get questions a lot about that, whether our umbrella covers apartments, and it does.
Yeah. It's important to understand that, you know, what we're doing is something different. You know, most of these programs are risk purchasing group programs. So what you mean is that you have one master policy, okay? No sharing of limits, no self-insured retention, defense in addition to the limit. You got a broad name and insured wording that includes volunteers and temporary workers. And one thing we do is have employment practices liability, as long as you have a D&O policy. So if you have a D&O policy right there, we will go over the D&O and include employment practices. Again, something that a lot of competitors don't do.
Absolutely. Great. And I did want to mention that the way that you get a quote is you fill out an online application. It's only through an online application, which you can obtain on our website, which is kdisonline.com. Go under umbrella, and you just complete the umbrella application. And you can also get quotes for other products by utilizing the online application as well, like D&O, crime, and cyber. And Kevin, I did get a question yesterday regarding a limit on a particular association. It's a 148 unit condo association. They do have a swimming pool and they have a rec center, and they have a $1 million limit. So can you talk about that a little bit, like how to ascertain and kind of determine how to give somebody advice regarding limits?
Sure. It's kind of simple, okay? If you really look at it, is that what kind of limit makes the most sense? And the perfect example is the grid that we had earlier on there, okay? If you happen to live in an area that's highly volatile, if you live, again, east of 95, west of I-5, you should go a higher limit, okay? If you live somewhere in the middle there, if you're in Chicago or different parts of Texas, it makes a big difference there. So I would say right now is that I would go based on your premium. You know, right now for 15 or 5, 15 or 10, $15 million limit, you know, they're not that expensive. So go for higher limit, go to minimum of 5. I say start at minimum 5 and work your way up based on where you're at in that grid. And that's probably the best piece of advice I can give you in terms of how you determine the limit.
Absolutely. Great. Great. And if anybody has any additional questions, as I mentioned, the question box on the screen, you can type in your questions there and we'll answer them during today's webinar. And I did want to mention the PowerPoint is in the handouts section. So feel free to click on the handout section and you can download it. I'm just checking now to see if we have any questions that have come in. Okay. I do see a question here. Let me see, it's kind of a small little box. Okay, it's a little hard to read it. Okay, I do see part of the question. So if the underlying GL excludes something, an umbrella policy may cover it. That's her question.
Exactly, and that's the key. You have to make sure that there are exclusions, and again, a perfect example is on discrimination. Discrimination is excluded under the general liability policy. A straight excess would exclude it. So what the umbrella does is provide some primary coverages. And again, a lot of umbrellas have self-insured retentions. Ours do not have self-insured retention. So yes, it does pick up some type of coverages that's excluded under the primary policy.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. And let's see. Okay. Somebody has a question here regarding a 247 unit condo in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Our broker can get a take it or leave it umbrella policy of 100 million. Or I think they're saying our broker can get I'm not sure what a take it or leave it umbrella policy is of 100 million.
Well, again, I would say there's a lot of, so if you happen to be on the East Coast, especially the Northeast, having $100 million or even a $200 million is kind of normal for a lot of associations. Depending where you're at, certain coverages that we look at in North and South Carolina or Nevada or Utah, that seems unreasonable. But in the major cities, having a high limit is what it is what they have. So it's not
Not
unusual.
unusual.
That's for sure. Exactly.
Okay, that's normal. That's normal. Okay. Okay. And let me see. I think that looks like it for the questions. Now, if anybody thinks of any additional questions, feel free to send them into my email. My email is sbranson@kdins.com. And again, our handout, our PowerPoint from today is under the handout section. So you can click on that and you can download it. And then the quotes are obtained on our website, which again, I'll say it one more time, is kdisonline.com. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you for a great webinar, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I did want to mention that in January, we're going to be doing a very special webinar. We're going to do the 2019 year in review. We're going to talk about all the highlights of 2019. We've done a ton of webinars this year, so we're going to talk about all of them: social engineering, crime, umbrella, D&O, cyber, you name it. We're going to do them all, and it's going to be called In Case You Missed It.
All right. Yes.
Great. So happy holidays to everybody, and
Happy holidays.
Thank you for joining us, and send your questions in if you have any additional questions. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.